Okay, so Crisis on Infinite Earths is over. The final two parts aired last night, and yeah, the biggest event in Arrowverse history is now at an end. So this is gonna be a really hard video to make, mainly because I still haven't decided how I feel on this crossover. 1 second I'm so happy about it, I'm in love with everything they've done. Another second, another moment, I'm like, I don't like a lot of the things that they did. And so that's the thing, I don't feel like I have a good structure for this video, because I feel like when I start talking about things I love, I'll start going off on a tangent about things I hate, but when I start talking about things I hate, I'll start going off on a tangent about things I love. So I'm going to try and keep this kind of structured in a way where I'll talk about something I really liked and something I really didn't like, and kind of keep it like that to keep it balanced, so it's not overly negative, but I'm not being overly positive either. I also probably won't be giving this a grade or anything like that, or like any ranking or anything at the end, mainly because, like I said, I still don't know how I feel about it. I need to rewatch the whole thing. As of the time I'm making this video, I have only seen parts 4 and 5 once each. I do plan on watching them over and over and over and over and over again, probably 10 more times today alone, but as I'm making this, I've only seen them once, so some stuff I might be a little bit iffy on remembering, but I'm pretty sure I remember everything pretty well. So yeah, this is basically just going to be a video talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and yeah. So starting off with things with one thing I liked is I really thought that, well, I wasn't big on how Oliver was treated in the first 3 parts, and I still am not overly convinced I'm happy with how they treated him in the last 2 parts. I do think that in episode 4, how they treated him, how they treated his death, his going away, was a lot better. It was a much better send-off than what we got in part 1, which would have been his actual death. In this, his moment dying while talking to Barry and Sarah, his fight with the Antimatter, all of that stuff was really well done, and I thought that it was a much better way to send him off, especially the looking up at the rebirth of the universe, and kind of just giving that speech about how heroes have to go on while death is the easy part because he's peaceful and all this stuff like that. Even the music, everything was spectacular about that scene, and I was a little disappointed he wasn't in part 5 at all. I know a lot of people are really annoyed at how they treat Oliver in this. I kind of am too, but I think if we didn't get another send-off, if part 1 was the send-off we got, I would be very annoyed with this crossover. Because part 4 gave him a much better send-off, in my opinion, it brought that back a little. Like, I'm still not 100% certain I'm okay with what they did with Oliver, but in terms of what we got, I like that. I think that was a good way to send him off. One thing I didn't like about that was the Spectre thing, because it was very shoehorned in. Now, the Spectre was a pretty integral part of the Crisis on Infinite Earths comics, but even the coolest Spectre stuff from the Crisis on Infinite Earths comics didn't make it into the crossover. And the whole Spectre thing felt very shoehorned in. It was part of 2 episodes of the overall crossover, and that was it. And we're led to believe that this whole Spectre thing is supposed to be a huge part, but we hear of him for the first time in part 3, and then in part 4, he dies at the end of it, and that's it, he's done. Now, it's possible in the Arrow final, we're going to find out that Oliver still is the Spectre, and he's still looking over everything, especially since we know Oliver is going to be in that episode somewhat, but it's possible that could also only be flashbacks, or just kind of characters reminiscing about Oliver moments and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that Spectre thing feels very weird to me, and I do feel like that was a last minute addition. I think that was something that when they were finishing up the script, they realized that something wasn't clicking and they needed something else to do with Oliver, and they decided to put that Spectre thing in. Because, like, while I'm happy with how they sent Oliver off, I think that overall he shouldn't have been the Spectre. It was a very weird decision, especially since the Spectre hasn't been seen in this universe or this the Arrowverse at all yet. Like, if they had done Spectre a couple seasons ago in maybe Legends of Tomorrow or in some other crossover, they have the Spectre out there, and now we have already become the Spectre, that would be a lot better. But the fact that he just shows up out of nowhere, it's John Deegan, but it's not even a John Deegan we remember, it's a different actor, it all just felt a little bit weird to me. One thing I loved was Sarah and Barry together. And Sarah and Barry, they've been a part of the Arrowverse since almost the very beginning. These 2 versions of Sarah and Barry have been, when I say version of Sarah, because, you know, she was played by somebody else in the Arrow pilot, but I mean, Katie Lotz and Grant Gustin have been a part of the Arrowverse since Arrow Season 2, and considering how long they've been a part of all this stuff, they've actually interacted very little over the years. Maybe like in Invasion and Crisis on Earth X, they would have had a couple lines together or kind of just bouncing off each other, but I can't remember a single time they've had a proper conversation or they've properly talked. Part 4 and especially Part 5 of this crossover gave them some great moments together. And I really, really, really am excited to see where Sarah and Barry go forward in this. Like, while parts 1 to 3 felt like it was setting up the Kara and Kate relationship, parts 4 and 5 definitely felt like it was setting up the Barry and Sarah relationship. And I do really appreciate that, because honestly, I love Kara, but honestly, I would prefer Barry and Sarah to be the duo going forward. Barry and Kara is great, but I'm not feeling Kara and Kate yet. It might be Kate that's pushing me off it, but that one feels very forced to me. But I would love the Trinity going forward to be Sarah, Barry, and Kara. I think that will be a perfect Trinity. But yeah, I did really enjoy all the Sarah and Barry dynamics, especially since they were the ones there when Oliver died. It really elevated that scene, the emotions, all that, because out of the Paragons, they were the two heroes that they became heroes because of Oliver, both of them. Sarah became a legend because of Oliver. Barry became the Flash because of Oliver, and they're the two biggest heroes that Oliver has sparked in this universe. It's kind of saying that Oliver directly influenced both Legends of Tomorrow and the Flash, and they are there. And it really did feel like Oliver was passing the torch on them. He was passing the flame to them because he did spark, and they found the flame. So that was really, really, really enjoyable, and I do want to see more as Sarah and Barry going forward. A whole lot more of them together. I have heard some stuff suggesting that they're not going to be doing big crossovers for a while, kind of like how the MCU is taking a break from Avengers stuff. That's going to be a little bit disappointing, but I would like smaller crossovers. I'd like Sarah to show up at Star Labs every once in a while and ask for help on something. I'd want Kara to visit Gotham City and hang out with Kate. I want these little moments, kind of like how we used to have with Barry and Kara in World's Finest, or with Oliver just calling Barry to speed him somewhere and we get a quick cameo. I want more stuff like that. One thing I didn't like was the inconsistency with characters, and I don't mean inconsistency in power choices or like set parts and all that. I mean inconsistency in what characters they would use. Like, for example, this is a weird one to kind of talk about, but like, for example, Routh, Cisco, and Iris completely disappear after part 3. Like, they don't show up in part 5 at all, which is, it's very noticeable Iris isn't there. Cisco definitely felt weird to me, because it wasn't like they weren't using Flash characters at all, because Caitlin was there and stuff like that, and Mick, and they were in Star Labs for a decent bit of part 5, but still no sign of Cisco, no sign of Ralph, no sign of Alright, now I know the budget plays a huge part in this. They probably couldn't afford to have all these characters on set, especially they probably couldn't afford to pay a bunch of Flash characters to be on a Legends episode, especially since I'm pretty sure a lot of their budget has went to the cameos, which is another thing I want to talk about in both a good and a bad way. But and it's not just them as well, it's characters like Nia, Alex, Superman showing up at the final battle, but characters like Laurel, Ralph, Cisco, and a bunch of others don't show up at the final battle. It just feels like they didn't give much thought into thinking where each character should be. They were kind of just throwing characters at the wall and seeing what stuck in certain scenes, and it just felt all around weird. Like, it never once did we have a scene that felt as big or as grand of scale as in Crisis on Earth X, when all the characters on the Wave Rider standing there with Oliver, with all of them behind Oliver, and they're talking to Earth X Oliver, like, you know, when they're all standing in like that big shot. And then there's also obviously the big fight scene in Crisis on Earth X. I didn't think a single scene in Infinite Earths felt as big or as grand of scale as either of those two things from Earth X. I feel like in terms of amount of characters, Earth X was the limit. Earth X was like the tippity top, which kind of sucks. You know, this is Infinite Earths. We should be getting everyone. We should be getting huge battle scenes with everyone. But we didn't get anything like that. We didn't really get a group shot. The one group shot we did get was missing most of the characters, which was kind of annoying. So that's what I mean about inconsistency, is that I feel like they shouldn't have just picked characters and took them out whenever they wanted. They should have picked a set amount of characters, and they should have used those characters always. They shouldn't have, like, brought in Iris and Ralph in part 3 if they weren't going to use them at the climax of the whole crossover. Things like that. So, like, I would have preferred to see characters from part 5 in part 3 instead of those characters, that we're not getting confused about who was where and all this sort of stuff. I really enjoyed the jumping around the Speed Force stuff, even if it was a little bit confusing, and they didn't do a very good job at explaining why we were doing this and why we were hopping around different, like, timelines. It was weird, like, what, were we just jumping around moments in time that the Speed Force kind of kept a hold onto? Like, how was John able to go to that scene from Invasion where Oliver and Kara were talking with each other? Because I thought it was weird, because I thought that, like, the reason why Kara had her normal hair, like, or her current hair, but she was wearing her old suit, is because Jean was perceiving it the way that he would. Like, he can't see Kara in that old hair anymore, but he knows that she was in a different costume then. But at the same time, Jean shouldn't have been able to remember that moment at all, because he wasn't there. And that brings up another point where Barry is going around, and, like, he goes to the Elseworld scene, and he's like, I wasn't here for this, and stuff like that. But then, I guess it's because Oliver was there for those moments, so Oliver is the one kind of connecting the moments together. It's like, I don't know, I feel like they could have explained it a lot more, why they were jumping around to these points in time, and it felt like they were choosing very weird moments as well. Like, it was supposed to be moments that Oliver formed a bond with somebody, but he was going to a moment where he was antagonizing Ray, in not a good way as well. It was a way that, like, this was right before him and Ray would fight each other. Like, if you want to pick a moment him and Ray formed a bond with each other, it should be later on after Oliver doesn't kill Ray, and not when he's, like, in his office arguing with him. But yeah, it was cool nonetheless seeing a lot of these moments. It felt very endgamey, where they were going around different big points in Arrowverse history, and I did enjoy it. I thought it was a cool way to have some characters in the episode that they couldn't have gotten in otherwise, like Diggle, Laurel, Ray, a bunch of others. And it was nice. It was cool to see, like, unique little things on those as well. Like, we weren't seeing the scene reportrayed or redone. They were the current versions of the characters in a way. Like, we were seeing these scenes from the point of view of current Oliver, or from the point of view of current Barry, which was very nice. They could have easily just done a clip show kind of thing and basically recreated the scene one for one, but they didn't. They added in little stuff. Like, the Oliver and Ray scene, for example, it was very cool because they weren't acting the same way. Like, Oliver, he was acting kind of like he was there, but he also knew he wasn't there. He was saying the things that he said to Ray, but he was saying them in a different way, and it added a new kind of uniqueness to the scene. And I really did enjoy that. I thought that was a cool way to kind of do it all, like, not just do it over again. One thing I didn't like was a little blue character appearing in part 5. You know, Bebo, I believe his name is. Yeah, that I heard about that a while ago, that somebody rumored that Bebo was going to show up in it, and I think it was somebody asked 3 things, and one of them was, is Bebo in the crossover? And Mark Guggenheim said one of those 3 things is true, and everyone's like, if Bebo is the thing you're saying is true, I'm going to freak out. And yeah, when he showed up, I facepalmed. I don't know why, who on earth thought that was a good idea to put in the crossover? Like, I know it's a Legends episode, Bebo was Bebo, he's funny. That Bebo joke, it was overdone the second time you did it. It was funny the first time, but the second time you did it, it was overdone. And it's like, what, the 15th time you've done it now? And the fact that you literally downplay the emotional levity of Oliver's sacrifice by immediately following up that scene with Bebo, it felt insulting, to be honest. We go from a scene where Diggle, Sarah, Renee and Dinah are all crying over Oliver, and it's really sad, and I was tearing up, and then immediately they go to Bebo showing up and be like, oh, Bebo's invading Star City. Like, come on. You can't tell me that no one who was in that writing room, or no one who was looking at those screeners of the episodes weren't going, okay, maybe there's a little bit of inconsistency with tone here, maybe we should tone this back, or at least make it not as funny. Which it wasn't funny, but you know what I mean. Like, they shouldn't have been trying to put so many jokes in on top of it. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way about them not not supposed to be doing that. Like, I don't know. I feel insulted that they would do that. That they would downplay Oliver's sacrifice by immediately following up with Bebo invading Star City, with Ray taking selfies of it, with Mick shooting it with the goo going everywhere. It felt very weird. And I know that the Arrowverse does this a lot of time. It's goofy. It doesn't like take itself too seriously, but it still felt a little bit too soon, in my opinion. Like, if it was like the end bit of the episode where instead of having the Gleek from Super Friends, they instead had Bebo show up there and then that would lead into a Legends of Tomorrow episode where they'd be fighting Bebo, but it would just be the Legends. That could be fine. I could totally be okay with that. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of him having taken up so, as well as that he took up a good, like, I don't know, 5 minutes of the crossover that could have easily been given to something else. Like Reverse Flash, for example. Where was he? We had been told back at Comic-Con that Reverse Flash or Eobard Thawne was going to be in this crossover. We've been hearing since Flash episode 1 that Reverse Flash is involved in Crisis. Eobard in his last appearance in Flash said, "See you in the next Crisis, Flash," and he didn't show up at all. They could have easily gotten rid of those Bebo scenes and replaced them with Reverse Flash stuff instead, but no, they didn't. One thing I loved, obviously, was finally the formation of an Arrowverse Justice League, or an Arrowverse team. We finally have it. It's only taken them 8 years. We thought it was going to happen at the end of Invasion, then we thought it was going to happen at the end of Earth X, but it finally happened now. The table looks great. Obviously, they're not allowed to use the name Justice League, because they can't even put JL on the table. It's a star, I'm guessing, represents Paragons. The fact that they didn't call themselves the Justice League it makes me firmly believe we are never going to hear the two words Justice League together in the Arrowverse. I don't think they're ever going to be able to call themselves the Justice League. Unfortunately, if they were going to be, it would be in this episode, or it would have been in this crossover, but it didn't happen. So, but yeah, it was great to see that finally done. The chairs looked awesome. I like that there's gonna always be a seat there for Oliver. I like that there's kind of that arrow-shaped flame thing that's always there, and I like the way that the Green Arrow costume is there. It felt very nice, and I really do hope that this isn't the last time we see the Hall of Justice. I hope that this isn't the last time we see a scene like this. I really hope that this is them kind of going, don't worry, we're going to be doing Justice League related stuff in the future. They might not be called the Justice League, but we're going to be doing crossovers in the future that'll make you feel like this is a Justice League episode with these characters. And not just be like, oh look, there's a team, but we're never actually going to see them really work together again. We're never going to see all these characters kind of together again. Because that's kind of what I felt after Invasion. We got the Hall of Justice, we got all these characters together, and then we never saw the Hall of Justice again for like 4 years, and we never really got another build-up to a team dynamic for another 4 years. But yeah, it was really fun to see. I was so happy to see it, and just a little montage of seeing the little logos on the chairs. It was so cool. And yeah, this is already my favorite version of the Justice League. So, yeah. And speaking of that sort of stuff, the cameos. So, Ezra Miller Flash. That was so unexpected, and I think I'm fairly confident in saying that was the most shocking thing we've had in the crossover, because that was a cameo that they hid very, 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 very well. And I know a lot of DC movie only fans haven't really been paying attention to Crisis. They haven't really cared about Crisis. I know that Ezra Miller Flash cameo turned a lot of heads that otherwise wouldn't have taken notice. So they did a job in making themselves known. Plus, Ezra Miller is a huge fan of Flash. He's a huge fan of the TV show, so he's a big reason why this happened. I feel like if he was in any way not too interested, it probably wouldn't have happened. But yeah, that was amazing to see. It's the biggest cameo we got, to be honest. It's also, we reference Victor, so it's obviously is the DCEU Flash. I know a lot of people saying that it's the Snyder Cut version of the character, not the canon version of the character. It's the canon version of the character. Until we hear differently, it's the same Flash. The Snyder Cut Flash and the canon Flash, I don't really think there's a differentiation there. I think that this is the normal version of the Flash from the movies. Plus, both those suits together looked awesome. I did feel at first that it felt a little bit too much like a parody. It felt like it was an ad for something. at first, the way they were talking, but then I was like, no, this is just fun. I'm just being pessimistic. This is actually really cool. Yeah, I did really enjoy that bit. A down point I have for the cameos, though, when it comes to, like, as great as it was seeing Tom Welling's Clark Kent, as great as it was seeing Kevin Conroy's Batman, as great as it was seeing Birds of Prey and all this sort of stuff, I do personally believe that the cameos ended up affecting the story in a negative way, because the story, let's be honest, the story wasn't very well written. It was a whole lot of cool moments that held this crossover together, but in terms of story beats, it was very rushed. And like the fact that Anti-Monitor doesn't actually have a team, like in the comics he had Reverse Flash, he had Psycho Pirate. We didn't have Reverse Flash, but he had Psycho Pirate, and he had a bunch of other characters like Harbinger and stuff like that. But in this, he only had Shadow Demons. Like, Psycho Pirate has been built up as being a part of Crisis on Infinite Earths since Elseworlds, and he was nowhere to show up in this. Reverse Flash has been built up to be a part of this. He was nowhere in this. You see, Reverse Flash was supposed to be leading the army of Shadow Demons, and they were nowhere in this. And I feel like that's budget. They spent all of their budget on the cameos, on getting all of these people, and thus they didn't have enough money to do effects for Reverse Flash, to get back Psycho Pirate, so they instead decided to just replace all of this with Shadow Demons, and which was a whole lot easier. They wouldn't have had to actually do proper fight choreography. All they have to do is just tell the main actors, look like you're punching and kicking something, and we'll edit it in over CGI, because that's what they did. They just told the Paragons during that mine scene, just kick and punch whatever you want, and we'll edit stuff in around you. Whereas if Reverse Flash was there, or if Psycho Pirate was there, or if a number of other villains from the Arrowverse were there, they'd actually have to do proper fight choreography, and they'd have to obviously spend more time and pay more time in it. So I feel like the cameos did affect the story negatively. And as cool as it was seeing all of this stuff, I honestly would have rather a more concise, a more solid, more better written crossover than a fun one with a bunch of cool cameos that we wouldn't have expected. But yeah, seeing the Marinovu's backstory was cool. Anti-Monitor looked really cool. The Marinovu's backstory, it felt very much like a comic book. It felt kind of exposition that a comic book would do. Seeing Black Lightning was obviously awesome with all these characters. Even if he was a little bit weird in the Hall of Justice scene, when he just after that big eulogy for Oliver, he just kind of goes, seems like a cool dude. That was a little bit weird. I don't know what was off with that, but it was the Vanishing Point stuff was very good. I thought that the montage showing the characters after being there for a couple months, the Ryan Choi talking about how Sarah was the Paragon of Destiny, she doesn't even believe in tomorrow. I thought that sort of stuff was really interesting and really cool. I would have preferred more of that, but obviously time definitely was a problem there. If we had an extra episode, I would have loved to see like half an episode devoted to the characters there, kind of freaking out, kind of what they're going through, how they're all kind of starting to butt heads and stuff like that. In terms of Ryan Choi, I'm still not happy with him being a Paragon. I still think that he shouldn't have been shoehorned into this crossover, and he took very, very, very valid time away from other characters. Like, if they could have given any already established Arrowverse character his role in this, and thus we would have gotten more development for a character we already knew, and we wouldn't have, spent this time on a character we didn't know yet. I get it though. Ray and Brandon Routh are leaving Legends of Tomorrow. They need Ryan to be there to replace him, which is very evident in Part 5 when they were giving Ray and Ryan those kind of moments together. I do believe that the battles in this were not very good at all. The fights, I don't think any of the fights in any of these 5 parts were on par with any of the fights from Crisis on Earth X or Elseworlds. Earth X and Elseworlds just felt better in terms of fight. They felt more well done. They felt like more time was given to them, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm not happy with how Nash was turned back from Pariah. I would have liked him to stay Pariah. He seems like he's just back to normal Nash Wells, which is disappointing, because seeing Pariah in the back half of Flash have like PTSD of everything that's happened would have been really cool, but no, I guess not. They didn't explain Earth Prime well enough. Like, we should have gotten a montage at the end of Part 5 that kind of was showing us where certain people are. Like, What is Laurel still from Earth 2, or is she now in Earth 1? Is she in Earth Prime Laurel? Where's Jesse Quick? Where's Jay Garrick? Is the Smallville characters dead? You know, we should have gotten kind of a quick montage explaining about that. And I also was not too happy with how the multiverse was restored already. In the comics, it took them 20 years to bring back the multiverse. And they did that at the end of this already. Like, I know they kind of had to. We need to have other universes out there, because they can't be like, oh, the DC movies are on this Earth, oh, Titans is on this Earth. It just wouldn't make sense. But it did feel like, as for a Crisis on Infinite Earths, it didn't do much of a do-over when the multiverse is already back. But yeah, that's kind of all my quick thoughts. As you can tell, I've got a whole lot of thoughts that of things that I'm not too happy about. Hopefully this will clear up over time, and I'm still not settled on where I feel about it, because I just loved so much of it. And there's also so many other problems I have with it that are bringing it down for me, but I don't want to bring it down. I just want to love it. It's so hard. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all that. Tell me how you felt about Crisis on Infinite Earths, if you loved it, if you hated it, if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, and all that sort of stuff. And I hope you have an awesome day.